like, how okay is it to support these people? Why are people still supporting them? Logan Paul, Jimmy Donaldson, aka MrBeast, Jake Paul, those other celebrity YouTuber people, can we trust them is the question. I personally don't believe that you should trust anyone that you don't actually know in real life and that you only know from the internet, and even then you should keep your trust level for people at a pretty small minimum, at least in my opinion. But I have trauma and stuff, so who knows if that relates to you or not. However, when we're talking about superstars like Jimmy Beast, I think we're not really asking ourselves, can we actually trust him like we trust a relative that has been there for us our whole life, or a really good friend that we've known since school days? We're really asking the question, can I support this person and still feel morally okay? If I'm watching the new Beast games on Amazon Prime, am I being naughty? Am I doing a bad thing for watching that show? Well, in my book, maybe, because, I mean, Jeff Bezos. But Jimmy himself might be a little more complicated. What I want to figure out in this video, and I'm doing things a little bit different, a little bit more off the cusp, not scripted, at least for this beginning part, is figure out like, how okay is it to support these people? Are we doing bad? Are we doing bad? And then it's like, we also have to keep into context that no matter if we like it or not, in modern day, we have to support corporations. Comparing supporting a creator to a corporation, and a lot of these creators have basically become corporations. I mean, a lot of the things they criticize Jimmy for comes from his company rather than himself, even though he, of course, represents his company, and they're kind of interchangeable, right? So while putting their company graphics together, I've realized that they don't really like advertising that they have a big company. All the big creators usually have a big company, with the exception of almost none. And of course, you need a small company to pay taxes and be self-employed or whatnot. But my theory is that they don't want to be associated with Vice, Vox, or even MrBeast for that matter, or like regular media. And they're not really like advertising that they have these big teams, with the exception of like Marcus Brownlee and LTT and whatnot. But a lot of these guys have editors and writers and so on and so forth. But they're creators and they want to be seen as such. I'm not saying this is wrong or anything, I understand. But I just find it interesting. One, I guess, is the audience gets more attached to the person. That's why social media works the way that it does. And then two, there's been a lot of fall off in the past with a lot of companies that kind of tried to run it more or less like the old ways. I don't know, I'd have to do a lot more thinking about what I actually think about it, do a lot more research and more graphic making and stuff. It is interesting as I look for their companies. They're of course findable, but only certain ones are easily, just like you go to their YouTube channel and just find it right away. Like Johnny Harris, for instance, has New Press, and he's shouting out new channels all the time now. He has 3 at the time of filming now. You can find it in the description of some of their channels, but it's kind of difficult to find. They're not like shouting it at the rooftop. All of the channels that are associated under New Press are labeled as the creator that is on screen, even though you know that they're are writers and producers and even Johnny Harris directing it, his vision. Again, nothing wrong with it. It's just an observation that seems really interesting to me. I can feel my brain getting pulled down that rabbit hole, but I have lots of other work to do as well. Stay tuned, I suppose. It's like, I really like Apple computers. They're pretty. I also have to say that I know how to build computers and work with Windows and Linux, because I have to toot my own horn whenever I talk about how much I like Mac, but I also don't like the way that you can't upgrade their storage and how much their storage and unified memory is when you're upgrading. And it's like, am I wrong for buying a Mac computer? And then it's like, am I wrong for installing Windows? Well, I kind of have to use Windows. Well, I don't have to watch Amazon Prime, and I don't have to watch YouTube for that matter. It is extremely hard to avoid unless you want to be a Quaker or something similar and live out in the woods and farm, and even then you would have to have access to a giant property and the resources to do that. There's a question of like, what is my buying power doing? Is it okay to enjoy a video if I don't necessarily know if this person is morally right? And then the other question is with, especially when it comes to someone like the Paul brothers, with all the stuff that's out there, even if none of it's true, There's so much out there if you're in the right space. Why are people still supporting them? And your first reaction is probably, well, children, and maybe that's true. I mean, there must be long-term supporters, and when it comes to Jimmy, I think there's a lot of regular people that maybe don't even watch that much YouTube, but they see him pop up and just love to watch. Like Dogpack, obviously Dogpack had his own motivations, it turns out, and Soggy Cereal for that matter. They both got millions of views. If I got that many views, I'd be a very happy camper. So like and subscribe. But compared to Jimmy, I mean, Jimmy's been getting roughly the same amount, if not more views than he did prior to the situations. And his pick to do the interview with Hoopdeville, I think, was pretty strategic. He's a big creator, yes, when compared to a lot of things, but it's not like he went on Dateline or did it on his own channel, because the truth of the matter is that, yes, allegedly they were probably deleting a lot of comments during the controversy, but when you're talking about 100 million views, 100 million people, and all of those subscribers, chances are there is literally tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people that either have no idea about the controversy or so little that it doesn't matter, or it just straight doesn't matter, which is probably a lower percentage than the ones that even know. It was MrBeast that I knew before the controversy, and I will say I watched some of his videos. I don't know how I heard about him, and if you held a banana to my head, I wouldn't be able to tell you what video was the first one that I saw of him, but I think it's, at least in my brain, it started with sort of some Mr. Jimmy Beast propaganda, where he was talking about how obsessed he is about making videos and how he's a very charitable man. I think Chris was with him and he was talking with the whole team, how he pension hacks everybody, and that piqued my interest, and he was already so big, and I think that's when I sort of started paying attention more. He bought me with the charity, which I still think is probably a pretty good thing, even if it is just to make himself look good. Not saying that it is just for that, but the way he portrayed it in the different interviews was that he was a good guy and he was like really into giving back. Somehow that led into the game show. I never really bought his whole game show thing, but I would watch MrBeast videos because I'm a video maker, and I thought, well, I want to see what all the fuss is. Why do so many people watch and so many people like these guys? And my first experiences were actually me just like laughing hysterically, because it was kind of like, what has the world come to? This is pop culture. This is what the world's come to, kind of like this old man experience, even though I wasn't even that old when I saw him. But it was just like bam, bam, cut, ding, 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 like all these things that like I already kind of was expecting, but by the time I had watched him, I mean, it was like, it was so out of control, like just cuts everywhere. And as a video editor, like I'm all about those cuts in a lot of the videos I make, but I mean, it was like ridiculous. And that kind of spiraled into watching some of his charity streams, and then I kind of tuned out. Now, as you all know, the YouTube algorithm is strong, and as these creators get bigger, and I think this plays into a big reason why a lot of these people start, remain being popular, is because they get to a certain size, YouTube sees how many people like them, and just because there's a controversy, well, all the algorithm might see, unless like a real person goes in there and changes it, is like a bunch of people are talking about MrBeast, put his videos out even more. And I mean, in this controversy, right, like millions of people have always been critical of MrBeast, nothing really stuck, and then the whole thing with Chris came out, and then almost to MrBeast's benefit, we get Dogpack, and Dogpack is like all slander or whatever, but the truth is MrBeast has the biggest deal that any YouTuber has ever had at this time with Amazon, and he's also making more views on YouTube than ever before, as far as I know, or at least like relatively the same. Like they might have had to delete a bunch of comments, but he's still doing spectacular. So my point is, once you get to a certain size, the algorithm, as you know, when you click on a video, it's gonna recommend you more of those videos. And with somebody like MrBeast, the algorithm sees that a lot of people like it, chances are the next person's gonna like it prior to all the controversies. Like you would think that I knew Logan Paul, right? When it comes to Logan Paul, I didn't really know who, like I recognized his face, right? I seen him around, but I honestly did not know who he was until Japan. But what I'm getting at is like, all publicity is good publicity to a certain point. Like you don't want to end up like Puff Daddy, right? You don't, like, as long as you're not a monster, I guess here in the land of America, or this crazy world in general now, people are gonna tune in out of curiosity. Maybe you fucked over like a bunch of people over there, but there's 8 billion people in the world. There is always more eyeballs. And if you're delivering entertaining stuff, there's always gonna be more people to watch, even if half your audience hates you, and in a year they might not. And it all compounds, and it just baffles the mind that, like, once you get to a certain level of popularity, a certain level of eyeballs, you have to commit a serious crime that actually sends you to jail to not be popular, because money makes more money, and there's always new eyeballs. It's really hard to take somebody like that down unless it's like he's messed up so bad, either financially or legally.